Hey everyone. Hello, learning people. So happy to be here. Thanks to Lewis for throwing on this fantastic free event. So important, and it's wonderful that he does that. One area that I've always been interested in is visual design, and accessibility for visual design is just so important. So, to get ourselves in the right frame of mind, imagine what it's like if you are a sighted individual to live in a world where you can barely see. Perhaps you use a screen reader that reads web pages aloud. You frequently come across websites and online courses that aren't designed for people with visual impairments. That's what that world is like. And even if you're someone who wears glasses, you know what it's like when you take your glasses off and things look kind of blurry. Hey everyone in chat, I would love to hear, how devoted are you? How committed are you to improving the accessibility and inclusivity of your work? One is not very motivated, five is very motivated. I'd love to see, wow, I've given this before, back in the old days, and people weren't as motivated, so this is great. Lots of fives. Well, I'm impressed. What a great audience. I'm that committed too, so I'm very happy to have you here. Thanks for that. You probably know this, but visual accessibility ensures that people with varying degrees of visual ability can use websites, e-learning, and other digital information sources. That includes people who are color vision deficient, who have low vision, who are blind, who are sensitive to light, who have cataracts and glaucoma. There are so many reasons why we have to care about this. And when you make your work accessible to everyone, then more people can learn, more people can improve their performance, and more people can benefit from your training. And making things visually accessible helps everyone. For example, text-to-speech software helps anyone learning in a loud environment, not just those with visual impairments. And high contrast does help people with visual impairments, but it's also helpful when there's glare on your screen. So as much as possible, this talk is drawn from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which I'm guessing many of you know about. It's also pronounced WCAG or WCAG. I've heard it pronounced all kinds of different ways. And these were developed by the W3C consortium. And if I couldn't find relevant guidelines, then I'm just going on established visual design guidelines. Three key areas, and there are many more, but for now, I think these three are the most important that learning designers can focus on. They're color, contrast, and writing alt text. So let's talk about color first. As you can see, color perception depends on your vision, the light that's emitted from the device or the light in the room, depending on what you're looking at, and a person's individual interpretation. And if you have talked about colors with someone that you're close to, you can actually get into an argument about whether a certain color is green or gray, or whether a color is teal or turquoise. And another thing that influences color is the background behind the color. So these are exactly the same blue, but when placed on a black background, it looks very different than when it's placed on a white background. At least it does on my monitor. I'm hoping it does, it gets across through Zoom to you too. So color blindness or color vision deficiency is really the inability to distinguish between certain colors. Almost no one cannot see colors. So these are the types of color vision deficiency. The most common is difficulty distinguishing between red and green. Next comes yellow and blue, and this is pretty rare. And finally, almost no one sees severely reduced color. That's very, very rare. So I like to really focus on the red and green. If you showed your learners this screen as feedback, the correct one answer is in green, the incorrect are in red. According to a visual deficiency simulator, this is what it would look like to them. So in chat, can you answer what would you do to fix this? What would you do to fix this? Let's see what people are saying. Change all colors to black. That could work, but how would you indicate it? Add a check mark and an X. That's one way to indicate the correct and incorrect answer. So really, you could change them all to black, Andrea. Oh, you can bold, Weston, and then do something else, such as bold or underline instead of using color. Check mark or an X, add an icon. Yeah, you get the idea. So let's remember that we never want to rely on color alone to indicate information. You can use color, but then always have something else. Great answers, thank you. Here's another one. Do you ever organize information by color? If you do, as you saw from the last example of what it looks like to someone who has red and green color deficiency, you can add icons and that will help. That will completely solve your problem if you decide you want to organize things by color. So we're never going to use color alone as the sole source of information. Here's another example. When you have your links in a color, someone who is colorblind may not be able to tell. So instead, underline your links. So for accessible color, avoid color combinations that are problematic for colorblind users, red, green, blue, and yellow. And if you're not sure, find one of those colorblind simulators online and run your work through it. And avoid using color as the only visual means of conveying information. I'm wondering if anyone else has some tips. Anything else you would add to this? I'll be watching chat for a moment. Someone says their school colors are blue and yellow. That needs to change. Anyone have anything else that they would recommend? Okay, well, if you think of it, put it in chat for everyone to learn from. Let's talk about contrast. And contrast is pretty tricky. And I'll tell you why. Oh, by the way, I have a PDF version of these slides for you that I'll give out at the end, so you don't need to take notes because I understand cognitive load. We can only process 3 to 4 things at once. So just kind of kick back, absorb what you can, and you can get the rest from the PDF document. So contrast is a measure of the difference in perceived luminance or brightness between two colors, expressed as a ratio. So to look at it mathematically, low contrast has a 1-to-1 ratio, and high contrast has a 21-to-1 ratio. And then we usually come up with something in between. So when we want to meet the guidelines, we are supposed to meet them in text, between the foreground, the text in the front, and the background. We also have to be concerned about images of text and also controls. So anything in our user interface is part of that, part of the guidelines where we need to make sure that contrast is, we're reaching the contrast guidelines. So all of those icons should have high enough contrast between the background. Two contrast checkers that I recommend are WebAIM and Adobe Color. And if you have one that you like, maybe you can put that in chat for everyone. If you haven't yet learned how to check your contrast, here's how. First, you have to find the hex code of the number. And a hex code is simply 6 digits that represent red, green, and blue. And you don't even have to understand technically how it works. They're just a way to represent colors. They tell a digital display how much red, green, and blue to show. So if you want to find a hex code, if you've never done this before, almost all of the tools you may use allow you to do that. And I'll show you how you can do it in PowerPoint. But that's right, and you can get a color picker for your browser and use that. So if I were using PowerPoint, I would click on the picture. I want to make sure this contrast is good. Choose the RGB sliders, and there is a little dropper to select the color. The hex color code displays there. You copy that. And then you know that your text is white, but if you don't know what white is, it's 6Fs. You can again find that in a color checker. And the green background. Now I'm curious, tell me in chat if you think that this is good enough contrast. Is anyone having trouble reading this? Do you think people with low vision might have trouble reading this? Let me see what your answer is in chat. Nope, 3 people think that it's not enough. 4. Okay. Too bad I don't have prizes for you. The larger font size helps. That's true. So let's see how it would pass in one of these color checkers. You can decide, and it's usually dictated by your organization, whether you are sticking to a AA conformance level, which is the minimum, and a AAA, and you'll see what I mean. The minimum contrast for level AA is 4.5 to 1. And you don't even really need to know what it means. You just have to know that's the number, and you're going to check it in a contrast checker. And if your text is large, it's 3 to 1. Now, if you want to go to the highest level for now, that would be 7 to 1 contrast ratio and large text 4.5 to 1. So I ran those numbers in the WebAIM contrast checker, and I inputted is that a word, inputted? And I input the foreground color and the background color. And as you can see, it comes up with a ratio of 3.05 to 1. Well, AA needs 4.5 to 1, so it fails there in normal text. And at the AA conformance level, it passes at larger text, but it still failed at the at the highest level, AAA. So what can we do about this? Well, notice that there's a slider here. And I just kept using the slider and going towards the right to find a green color that would work. And notice those colors work. So I just copied that background color. And if you know a graphic editor very well, you can probably adjust the image to a darker green, or you can just use a solid green background. But that's how you can overcome having poor contrast, checking and overcoming it. So, it works for both of those. So the guidelines are to use color contrast checkers to ensure your color choices meet accessibility standards. And these are the standards for AA and for AAA. I always like to go with the highest standards. But there's a word of caution about contrast, and I'm wondering if any of you have experienced this like I have. Did you ever experience where the recommended color or the recommended contrast doesn't really look right to you? Can you answer in chat? So for example, the black text passed, but that looks worse to me than the white text. Let me know if you've had this experience, and I'll look in chat all the time. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Everyone has. That makes me feel better. I was going to start a support group. Well, here's why. Well, actually, here's the fix. What I'll do is just make it larger, make my text larger, and then I know it's going to pass. So the problem is that the WCAG 2, which is what we are using now, guidelines, only use a mathematical algorithm, and that does not replicate human visual perception in terms of brightness and contrast well enough. So WCAG 3, the newer guidelines, are exploring ways to how to improve that. You can also test your contrast with the APCA contrast calculator, but it is not compliant with the guidelines. But you can use that as a second check. And then you still have to go with the WCAG 2 guidelines in most cases. So you're going to want to make your text larger or make the contrast increased. But that's why it's just really not correctly replicating human perception yet. So I hope that helps. Let me see what you guys are saying in chat. The glare on my screen makes the white text worse for me. Oh, that's interesting. Especially with my visual impairment. I prefer the white. Yep. See, everyone's different, but I think the APCA, please don't ask me what it means, I forget. I know P is perceptual, I believe. May be the answer, but you can't use that alone because it doesn't really comply with the current guidelines. But that's the answer. Okay, let's look at alt text because alt text can be difficult to write. In chat, can you tell me what problems you have found with writing alt text? Yes, thanks for that resource, April. What problems do you find, what challenges do you find when you're writing alt text? And actually, it's not supposed to be hyphenated, by the way. Folks who have different needs from the alt text. Yes, that's true. I worry about being too generic, wondering if it's necessary. It depends on the audience. Is it decorative or not? How long to make it? The character limits. It really is complex, isn't it? What to do about complex images. Born blind, don't care about color folk who lost vision later might want that info. I think the most challenging concern complex images with complex images such as flowcharts. I'm so glad I'm doing this section here. How to manage the alt text with image descriptions for complex images. Okay, I actually think there are answers to every one of those questions. So first off, you do need alt text. So let's see what alt text is. It describes non-text content. It benefits people with not only visual impairments, but also with cognitive impairments. And it's also displays in browsers in place of the image if the file fails to load, like if you're in a situation or in a region or area of the world where you may not have great broadband access. And most importantly, it benefits people who use screen readers. And if you haven't tried a screen reader, well, I explain it, but I also want to tell you something else. So a screen reader, if you're not familiar with them, reads aloud text written on the screen. It will read the alt text description of images unless you tell it not to. And it will also read buttons, links, and other controls. And I highly recommend downloading a free screen reader and testing it out because it will be surprising how complicated it makes things and how, I mean, they're great too, but it will really help you write your alt text. Also, there's an additional complication for people who are learning designers. So on a regular website, the alt text might say a person making bread. But if you're writing the alt text for an e-learning course, page-based, slide-based, it doesn't really matter what it is. And if the course is doing step-by-step instructions for how to make bread, then you would have to do this whole thing. You would want to say in your alt text, a person wearing an apron, kneading dough with both hands. That lets them know wearing an apron is good, it's messy. It lets them know that you need two hands to knead dough if you have them. So that's an example of kind of the pressure we're under and how web accessibility guidelines don't always meet our needs for learning products. It's pretty easy to add alt text. This is how you would add it in Storyline. You would add the alternate text right there. Now, there are the W3C has tutorials for a web accessibility initiative. And in those tutorials, they categorize images. And I think that 5 of those categories are important for learning designers to know, and it will really help you write your alt text. It just makes the whole process easier. So we've got informative, decorative, functional, images of text or image text, and the complex. So this will probably answer most of the challenges that you're facing. Informative images contribute to the meaning of a learning experience. Here's an example for this image. You're going to write a short description that conveys the essential information. A person pours motor oil into a funnel to fill the oil reservoir of a car. Notice I didn't really say anything about the person. It doesn't matter about the gender, the race, or ethnicity. Now, there are some courses where it might possibly matter, but in these cases, it does not. So there's no need to junk things up, to possibly add your own biases, or to make assumptions. It's just a person, because the important part is that they're pouring motor oil into a funnel to fill the reservoir. Sometimes you'll see an image that you think, is that decorative or is that informative? And in this case, I would say, even though it may look decorative, that it's actually important because the text is saying, put yourself at the same height or lower than the child, and you can read the rest of this text. So I'm going to say that it is important. And here's the alt text I would include. An adult is bending down to be at the same height as a child while listening. Do you agree or disagree that this image needs alt text? April agrees. Curious? Yeah. Okay. So there's agreement about that. But at first, you may not be able to tell, so you actually have to stop and think about the learning goal and how you can reinforce that. Now, you all know that we have quite a few decorative images in e-learning and in slides. These are images that enhance visual appeal, but they don't convey significant meaning to a learning experience. So what you do in this case is you use the null alt text by entering a pair of quotation marks with no space, like two quote marks next to each other. We often have, a lot of background images that are going to be spoken. The file name will be read by many screen readers. So just where in the category that has alt text, the little input field, put two quote marks, and that's it. I use those all the time because even though some people say it's eye candy, I find that when it doesn't overwhelm the instructional image, it can be motivating for it to be aesthetically pleasing. So there's always that debate going on in my mind and probably yours too. Okay, someone is saying they usually add alt text to a logo. I think I don't know the answer. I would say a logo on every single screen would definitely be decorative, but perhaps on a title screen or the first page of a website, um, it might depend. If you're working for an organization, they may have a style guideline. For example, let's say you're at a conference where they ask you to put the name of the conference on the title screen or on every screen. I probably wouldn't do it there because people know what conference they're at. But if it's customer e-learning for some other company, then maybe I would put it there, one time, just in the front. I think Karen said it much better than I did. It's dependent on the content of the course. I would just do it that way. Yeah, you're right. It can create cognitive overload. You're right, Jessica. And you wouldn't even want it. I usually try to talk, I haven't even had anyone ask for that in a long time in a presentation, but I used to, and I would just talk them out of it. I said, I can't put it on because I teach not to do that. And they would say, okay. Functional images. All right, so these are the ones that are interactive elements like buttons and links used to initiate actions. In your alt text, convey the action the image will initiate. And if the image is important, include a brief description. Now, I made that up. I haven't seen that in any guidelines, but there are many instances in e-learning where the image that's on a button can be important. So for example, the alt text for this is search button. That's easy enough. But what about customer objections? What about if I have an e-learning screen with 3 buttons of customers. That's kind of different than just say, click on the customer. I want people to know what she looks like because every customer is going to be different. Like some might be looking cynical, some might be, I don't know, just have a completely different type of expression on their face. So here's what I'm thinking. And maybe you'll come up with something even better than this. But what I'm thinking is you could write in your alt text, hear Mia's objection. She stands with her arms crossed and appears resistant. So you're learning how to overcome people's objections or at least respond to them. So that's what I think you should do for a functional image. I'd be curious if people agree or disagree. I just don't want to say, click on a customer. In this case, I think it matters how they look. All right, now we've got image text. This is text created in a graphic program and it's known as embedded text. Screen readers do not read image text, so you have to provide the exact text in the alt text area because the screen readers can't read it. That's why whenever possible, try not to use graphic or image text. So that's text made in Photoshop or Canva or Canva, that's it. So in this case, I would say sticky note with security tip, don't click on links in your email. So images of text, because the reason that you have to write it out is because you are trying to give people with low vision and blindness, people who are working in low bandwidth and can't see your images, you're trying to give them a similar experience that sighted individuals or people who can download images are having. So always think of that. You're trying to give them an equivalent experience. Now here we go with complex images. Someone I know who's an accessibility advocate has told me that information graphics are some of the most difficult ones to create for accessibility. So if it's possible to avoid them, you can do so. If not, here's one of the ways to deal with it according to the guidelines. So let's define complex images. They contain substantial information like graphs, charts, and screenshots. There are 2 parts in most cases that you're going to want to use for complex images. The first part is you write a short description of the image and then provide a location or a link to the long description in most cases. Then in the long description, provide a text version of the essential information conveyed by the image. So first you're going to write a short description, and of course I have an example, and then the text version of all of that data or a summary of the data. So here's the first part. Here's my description. Bar chart comparing the current average cost of U.S. colleges. See the full description associated with this graph, and that's the link. And then I don't need to read it, but it explains the graph and it gives the numerical values. So that's what it takes to write alt text for complex images. I think I'll stop and look at the chat. April says, these are the questions I ask myself when determining whether an image should have alt text or be marked decorative. What is the context in which the image graphic is used? Who's the audience? What information is the image intended to convey to sighted users? And is the equivalent information fully conveyed in the body text? I think those are great questions. Thank you for that, April. Um, PF says LONGDESC has been deprecated. The other recommendation now is to provide the long description as a linked resource. Okay, good to know if you're working with, is that HTML, CSS? Oh, wait, there's one more question there. Do I need alt text and a caption for the image? I struggle trying to balance needs for captions. I think captions are pretty important for sighted individuals. It's going to, you're going to depend on the context, but if a sighted individual will need the caption, I think you should include it. Here's a question wondering whether to avoid infographics. So you prefer to not create an image if it's not universal? What about creating different alternative options? I mean, personally, I love information graphics. I think if they are helpful to the learning, then, and you can't find another way because of accessibility, then I think you have to use it. And then really provide, really spend some time creating an equivalent experience for non-sighted individuals. That's my answer. But I too debate that and say, do I really need one? Is this really going to help? Is it super important? And a lot of times it is. The thing to remember is that the human brain cannot, how can I say it, capture and manage lots of data. So sometimes an information graphic or a table is necessary when there's a lot of data. If there's a simple way to convey it, and it's not much, like maybe you could put that entire graph of college costs in a paragraph because it wasn't that complex. So that's another thing to consider. If it's lots of data, you may have to use an information graphic. If it's something that can be explained in, I don't know, a simple paragraph, a few sentences, maybe not. I hope that helps. We're always debating all of these things because we're so dedicated to helping people learn. It's not an easy job. Oh, here's more of it. More of the example of the long description. So let's review, but I will give you this so you don't have to worry about it. Informative images. Write a short description that conveys the essential information. Decorative images. Use null alt text. Functional, convey the action the image will initiate. And like I said, I made this part up, so it's not a standard. If the image is important, include a brief description. I'll let you decide on that one. Images of text provide the exact text in the alt text area. And complex images, a short description, most likely a link to the location of the long description, and then the long description. A lot of times, like I have a WordPress site, I can do that if I have a long description just in the accordion below the image. So all the user has to do, or the screen reader has to do, is just click the plus sign and you'll be able to see the long description. So the location isn't really needed. Or I think I actually do say it's below the image. April had mentioned the things that, I believe it was April, the things that she thinks about when writing alt text. Why is this visual element here? Some of these overlap with hers. What information does it present? What's the purpose of the image? And how does the image help someone reach the learning outcome? If you can think of other questions that you would ask yourself, why don't you write them in chat to help everyone? So, oh yeah, be descriptive. Be concise. Somebody was asking for a limit. There's no hard and fast rule, but experts recommend trying to limit it to 125 characters, but just be concise. and avoid repetition. This is kind of important. You don't want to start with a graphic of or an image of, because the screen reader will announce that it's an image. In most cases, most screen readers will do that. I have a monthly newsletter. I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and I haven't uploaded the document yet. Of course, I was last minute, like we always are, but I will put it there, but I'm going to share it right here. I wonder if you have any questions or comments or anything. Louis, do we have any questions while I'm getting the document ready to share?
Let's see. I mostly been seeing comments, but let me take a look here. Actually, I haven't looked at QA in a minute, so
Okay.
check there. Nope, I don't see anything. Oh, wait. Yeah, nothing in the QA. But let me take a look. Okay, here we go. Can you say more about where or how to link a long description?
Yeah. So I think it depends on your medium. Let me get this document. So what medium are you talking about? Like, I just dropped the presentation. Oh, I didn't send it yet. Hang on. There we go. So there it is, folks. Can
Excellent.
you say more about where and how to link a long description? You can put it on a website. You can put it beneath the image if you have a way to have an accordion, so you hide it, and then if someone clicks on it, they'll get the full display. If it's web-based, you can put it on a web page. Those are the two ways I can think of. Anyone else?
Oh, hey, Connie, you posted that link just to host some panelists. Thanks, PF.
Oh, thanks. I didn't want anyone else to get it.
I know I
All
always have to
right.
set my thing to everyone right when we start, otherwise I'll forget.
Right. I should have done that. Here we go. I'm doing it one more time. I was wondering why nobody got it. Okay, there it is. That went to everyone. Anything else?
Let's see. Okay, I'm like, no, let's see. Just asking about the presentation.
I will upload it to that link I had also.
Great. I'm not seeing anything else come through.
Okay.
Connie, thank you so much. I love your pacing. I always like, it's almost ASMR to me just to listen to your presentation. I enjoy it every time
I,
because I
yes,
stay
that's
so
a
engaged.
compliment. No, I'm
Yeah,
just teasing. Thank you.
it's great.
If my
Um,
narration describes the images, do I need to add alt text too? Wow. I don't think so. I haven't, I don't know the answer to that, but I don't see why you would. Oh, maybe no. You better ask someone who knows more than me. Oh,
yeah,
yes, for deaf users. But if they can see the image,
right.
maybe you should just do it anyway, just to be safe. Okay, what do you mean by narration? Someone wants to know. Andrea wants to know.
Yeah.
I think you would have a transcript in that case. That's true. Like for my podcast, I make it true. You don't require all text if the image is described in the body of the text. I think it would be redundant. All right, thanks for that. A screen reader users, not all choose to go with the provided narration. Okay, there's that too. Wow, that was a really interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't hurt, Sandy says. It wouldn't hurt. Okay. The duplication can be annoying for screen readers. Okay, I give up. I don't know the answer, but I think you should talk to a few people who use screen readers and find out.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some accessibility experts out there. So there's Sarah Mercier, there's Brian Dusablon, there's Susan Miller. I'm sure they would be happy to answer that question. That's the way to go.